London town, bright lights, big city. They say if you tire of London, you tire of life. But isn't it interesting that for all London's glitz and glamour, you're never more than a stone's throw from a rat, or a click away from the surveillance cameras. Scratch under the surface, and you'll find a city as overrun by criminals as it is by rodents. No one knows this better than the team behind the Getaway.
We pick up the story 2 years on after the events of the first game. A simple bank job goes wrong, a small-time thug gets in over his head, and there's a cop-out for revenge.
To the untrained eye, the city seems huge. But to those in the know, it's really all about rights. Who controls which patch?
I'm with the Soho.
London's the real star of the game, and we wanted to build upon that as a stage. So we've introduced a whole bunch of new interiors. What's really exciting is the variety and scale of the new interiors. They're literally massive. They blow the socks away from anything we had last time round. We've got things like old DSS buildings, really clean city institutions. We've got things like sewers, rooftop chases, gritty London gangster locations like snooker halls, and then some really sort of bizarre exotic stuff like the Victorian pump house, for example.
London has always had the feel of a film set about it. From the litter blowing up in the streets to the billboards blinking brightly into the darkness.
This time round the look is definitely a little bit more darker. It's more sinister. In terms of the amount of detail that we'll be having, that has just gone up exponentially.
Don't believe those who tell you that only cabbies and madmen drive in the capital.
Out of the car.
How you get them is your business, but having the right transport is essential.
We've got everything that you would expect to see on the streets of London. So we've got hatchbacks, we've got estates, we've got white vans, we've got buses, we've got taxis. We've also got motorbikes as well in there for the first time, and the motorbikes really do add something to the dynamics of the game. The main changes that we've made to the handling of the cars this time round are to improve the predictability for the player. In the first Getaway game we had very realistic dynamic handling to the cars, but it did mean that when you're travelling at great speeds through the narrow streets of London with a lot of traffic coming head on towards you, it could make it quite difficult to get through those gaps and get round those corners in a predictable sort of way. So we've made the handling a little bit more easy for the players to do that kind of manoeuvring that they want to do. It improves the fun really of the driving missions.
The problem with London is that it's all too easy to get in over your head. You try to keep a low profile, but somehow the city has a way of drawing you in.
The thing with Eddie is he's a traditional East End gangster in every sense of the word. Traditional values of honour, loyalty and loving your mum. This is exactly what Eddie's about.
Eddie is from the world of the first Getaway. He's old school, Bethnal Green, much the same as Charlie Jolson was, from that same kind of mindset.
I do look like him, and I do as close as anyone can be. You know, I've lived like Eddie O'Connor. I've been a boxer, I've been a fighter, I've been a heavy for, if you want to call them, gangsters.
He's agile and he's smart. He's no stranger to guns, but he's not afraid to use his fists, and a good brawl is what he's into.
Lawbreakers attract law enforcers. It's the nature of the beast. Find a Yardi drug dealer, an Albanian gangster, or a Cockney car thief, and there's sure to be a copper not far behind.
Mitch works for the Special Operations Unit, which is an elite squad within the Met Police that deals with organised crime.
He's quite a quiet guy, and you never really know what's going on in his head. And we see at the very beginning of the game a flashback to something that happened in his life. And he's actually been off the force for 2 years.
Don't move! Put the gun down!
Initially, Mitch is not actually trusted greatly by a couple of his colleagues, and even his senior officer, Monroe, is slightly suspicious of him.
I'll pretend I didn't see that.
As a juvenile, he was involved in a lot of crime. The army kind of straightened him out, but he's still got his dark past, and in the story, he's kind of on edge between being the good and the bad.
Calm down, Mitchell.
You mate John nicked off with the Icon.
The arrogance of youth.
Oi, what are you doing?
The city's full of it. Bolshevik confidence, a certain swagger, what can only be described as attitude.
Sam spent a lot of time as a youngster in juvenile detention units. This is where she picked up her gymnastic skills.
Almost there, come on.
Additionally, she's learned a lot of computer skills along the way, so she's kind of a hacker character in the game.
There's a lot of backstory with Sam, and she tried to hack this code and that code. She set up an online casino. She tried to transfer money from this big bank into her mother's bank account.
She sort of wants to take a few risks and really wants to go for it. And, you know, like, she's just a young girl, yet she'll want to go in, like, when everybody's shooting and she'll want to be part of it and everything. Everybody wants her to sit in the car and she doesn't want to.
Stay where you are. The other boat's coming for you.
I do.
She's very antsy, and one of these waif-like figures has got too much energy and too much drive.
Guns!
Even criminals yearn for the better things of life. Expensive art, high culture, chess, and fine wine. Viciousness and grace, a deadly combination.
Victor Scoble is a guy that hides behind the scenes. He's got the money, he's got the power, but he also has a huge connection to the illegitimate side.
If you've ever met those people that when they watch you, they make you nervous, that's one of the things that, as a key, I went for with Victor, which is that thing that he can smile and be watching you as if you're already gotten rid of.
The character I play is Victor's girlfriend, Zara. And Zara's a very hard woman, and anyone that crosses her will realise this. However, when she's around Victor, she's a totally different person. She's seen, but she's definitely not heard.
So how do you create a soundtrack worthy of the capital city? Can you really capture the contrast of light and dark in a music score?
The music on Getaway 2, we've really pushed the boat out this time. We've actually got two different groups of people collaborating to get a really unique and original score. So first of all, we've got a company called Nimrod Productions who are scoring the cutscenes, and they're doing that in quite a traditional sort of cinematic style with 40-piece orchestra and lots of live instrumentation from electric guitar to drums to bass. But then to add a sort of modern twist, all the in-game music is taking these traditionally recorded musical pieces and getting reworked through different artists on the Ninja Tunes label. And they're really going to create modern, reworked interpretations of these themes.
Having the inside know-how is the only way to get what you're after. Cracking codes, developing shortcuts, attention to every conceivable detail. That's the key.
The AI is just across the board being improved. We've really overhauled that.
The men are following your command, sir.
In terms of the amount of intelligence there's so much more intelligence and less artificialness in there.
We've also added group behaviour, which you can see a lot with the SO19, so they can sweep through a building. Some may go into a particular room, some may stay on their path, others may be backing them up. This is important, we feel, to give the kind of reality of the team mechanic which you can get in gameplay.
One of the really exciting things was in motion capture, we captured magnetic and optical data at the same time. We really wanted to capture as much performance as possibly can, so we captured the facial animation at the same time as well. That with hand animation too, means we captured every facet of the actor's performance.
This time around we were determined that we would really individualise the performances, so from our point of view it's great because we get to do stuff that we never dreamed of doing on the first game. Having somebody run along a corridor and then sort of jump up and bounce off a wall and then pull themselves up into a ceiling duct is fantastic. It's much more interesting for the animators to have a crack at it.
In the first game, the characters were very well acted in the cutscenes. But what I wanted to do with the second game is actually bring the characters alive while you're actually playing the game. So when they're being shot at, you see them flinch.
You can never have too much protection. As any craftsman will tell you, having the right tools for the job is essential.
Well, with the Getaway being an action game, the weapons that the player gets to use are all important. And we have got a great variety of weapons in there. as well as the projectile weapons, the guns, the machine guns, the shotguns, that kind of thing, pistols, revolvers. What we've also got, which is not the sort of thing that you might expect to find in a game like this, are all the sort of gritty, urban, hand-to-hand weapons, things like snooker cues, baseball bats, crowbars. You might find a situation where Eddie picks up a snooker cue, snaps it over his knee and starts to cosh someone over the head with it, which is not the sort of expected thing that you might get from an action game, but it all adds to the gritty London feel of the game.
How'd you like me now?
So who's the star of The Getaway?
Tell me, or you'll lose another. Simple.
Eddie O'Connor, the charismatic crook outwitting coppers and villains in equal measure? Or Ben Mitchell, the hard-bitten copper, as ruthless in his pursuit for collars as any big-time gangster is for money and power?
Just answer the questions.
The answer is neither. The star of The Getaway is London herself, grubby and glorious, dangerous and dazzling. Just be careful of the rat.